Much easier. So I'm just going to do, oops, it looks like screen sharing is disabled for me.
Yeah,
So
why?
yeah, I'm not
Okay, here we
sure.
go. See
Let
if
me,
that helps.
oh, yeah, perfect. Okay. So I have a little presentation that I've been doing for folks. Um, I've done this for a few different ASTA chapters. I've done it. I did it at the ASTA Global Convention. If you're an ASTA member, you may have already seen this. And I've done versions of this in other fora as well. But basically, what I wanted to talk to you about is the idea of using documents and policies to help manage legal risk. The states where I'm licensed require me to let you know how you can find me later if you want to call me up and yell at me about something. So this is my contact information. I'll show that again at the end of the presentation. And then because I'm a lawyer, I have some professional responsibility disclosures that I need to get out of the way. So just as an FYI, the states where I'm licensed might view this as attorney advertising. This is really intended to just be for informational purposes only. So I'm not intending to provide specific legal advice to anybody on this call. By viewing this, this presentation or a webinar later, if it's recorded, that does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and my law firm. And I'm also required to tell you that prior outcomes don't guarantee future results. Meaning, just because a court decided something last time doesn't mean that they're going to decide it the same way the next time under similar circumstances. So, I mean, prior outcomes don't guarantee future results in law as in life generally. So just a little bit about me. I have been practicing law for about 25, well, more than 25 years, almost 30 years at this point. Most of my career, I've been representing people in the arts, entertainment, and media industries. But I also have a substantial number of clients now in the travel industry because I own my own agency, as Tori mentioned. So I was formerly general counsel of a couple major entertainment industry labor organizations. I worked for Screen Actors Guild for a while. I worked for Actors Equity on Broadway, but now I'm in private practice. I'm admitted to the state bars of New York and Illinois, but as well as several federal courts, including the US Supreme Court. I have clients all around the country on transactional matters, but obviously I can only go into state court for you in the states where I'm licensed if you want, if I was representing you. So getting that out of the way. If you've seen other presentations I've done, you've probably seen this slide or a version of this slide, which is just that the baseline for every conversation that I have about travel law is that travel is a high risk industry. So when you're selling travel, when you're traveling yourself, there are all sorts of issues that can crop up, anything ranging from the propensity for fraud and scams, when we handle our clients' payment information and chargebacks and things like that we're all dealing with. All of the things that can go sideways when clients are traveling, everything from pandemics and quarantines like we're dealing with now, terror threats, civil unrest, extreme weather events and natural disasters, all of those things can impact your client's travel. Supplier default and bankruptcies, whether that's shore trips or Crystal, we have to deal with that as well. And then travel is also a highly regulated industry. So in addition to all of these risky things that can happen when clients travel, the government is also kind of restricting and guiding us, is a nicer way to put it maybe, in terms of how we can talk to our clients about things when we're booking travel. So in spite of the fact that there's all that legal risk out there, the good news is that all of this legal risk can be managed in one way, shape, or form. So the things that I'm going to be talking about today, there are three primary ways, in my view, that you can manage the risk in your business. The first is to have your own E&O insurance. I am 100% sure that TPI has E&O insurance that probably covers you. Notwithstanding the fact that you're covered by their insurance, I'm going to recommend that you have your own. We'll talk about that a little bit. well-crafted documents and policies. That's also really important. And then the thing that I think sometimes gets overlooked is your workflow. Your workflow can actually help you manage risk in your business, which we'll talk about a little bit. Because that if you've got a good solid workflow, that's just helping ensure that you're not going to miss a step. So let's start with errors and omissions insurance. Obviously, simple human error happens. People make mistakes. You might quote the wrong date. You might quote the wrong price. You might inadvertently book something that your client didn't authorize because you thought you had the go-ahead, but you didn't. So errors and omissions insurance is really there to cover you for a mistake that you might make when you're booking travel for your clients. I said earlier, I recommend that you have your own E&O, even if your host agency provides a policy. And the reason for that is the policy that your host agency has, not only does that cover your business, it covers every other business that is under the umbrella of your host. And so if one of your colleagues has to file a claim under that policy, it could eat up all of the coverage limitations under that policy. And you want to make sure that your business is adequately insured. And if there's not a lot left over for you and you have to file a claim, that could really have some serious financial consequences for you. So I recommend that you just treat that as a cost of doing business. Get your own errors and omissions policy, even if your host agency provides a policy. I think for even the smallest agencies, $1 million in coverage is probably a good place to start. You can buy it at lower levels, but the last time I had somebody price it out, I think it was like $8 a year more to have $1 million in coverage for them than it was to have 500,000. So $1 million, I think, is a good place to start. And if you are an ASTA member, you should be aware that ASTA has a discount arrangement with an E&O insurance provider. 90% of the people I know have their insurance through Berkshire Hathaway. But if you're shopping around, I don't know a lot about the ASTA insurance company, but if ASTA is recommending them, then I would have no problem with that. And from what I hear, the rates are really good. So that's my spiel on E&O coverage. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about terms and conditions documents. So a terms and conditions document is designed to protect you when you are booking travel for your clients. It is the boilerplate for all of the trips you book, whether it's a group trip, whether it's an individual vacation, if it's FIT, if it's corporate, whatever it is. And because it's designed to protect you, you want to make sure that it's structured as a legal agreement between you and the client. You want your clients to agree to it affirmatively, and we'll talk a little bit about how to do that. There are some templates that are floating around out there on the internet. I know there's somebody out there who I don't think is a lawyer, but she's selling templates of terms and conditions documents. I'm not a huge fan of the cookie cutter template because I feel like every business is a little bit different. And sure, there's going to be a lot of boilerplate in there, but if you do a lot of school groups, you're going to need different terms than if you do a lot of adventure travel, or if you do a lot of travel for people with special needs, you're going to need different terms than if you do a lot of destination weddings. And so every business is a little bit different. When I draft terms and conditions documents for my clients, I do that on a custom basis so that we can really make sure that it fits to the specifics of the types of trips you're booking and the types of clients that you have. Okay, oops, let's see here. Okay, what goes into a terms and conditions document? So when I draft these, I put a lot of provisions in there. It tends to be a little bit of a longer document, but the terms that I put into a document tend to fall into one of 5 different categories. So first of all, I do include a lot of legally required disclosures. I mentioned earlier that travel is highly regulated, and so by putting in all of those things that the government requires you to disclose to your clients in your terms and conditions document, that can be a way of covering your bases for that. So things like airline tickets have an expiration date, seller of travel registrations for either if you have your own or if you're required to disclose your host agency's seller of travel registrations, things like that. A lot of the DOT and Federal Trade Commission disclosures you can make in your terms document. The other thing I put in second bucket would be provisions that distinguish your role as a travel agent compared to your role as a travel advisor. So you may be aware that, in recent years, we've started kind of rebranding our profession as being travel advisors to reflect the fact that we really are there as professional advisors to our clients. But in addition to that, prior to that, we were always referred to as travel agents. And the agent part of travel agent is because we are booking agents for the suppliers that we sell. And so you've really got two different loyalties and responsibilities that go in two different directions. On one hand, as a travel agent, you have a fiduciary duty to the suppliers that you book. You're not allowed to undercut their pricing guidelines or rebate commissions, things like that. But as a travel advisor, you also owe a duty of care to your clients. So being in that middle position where you're kind of between the supplier and the client is a complicated legal place to be, because you've got responsibilities and obligations that run in two different directions. And putting terms into your terms and conditions document that clarifies what your role is can be really useful in terms of protecting you from liability and legal risk. So obviously, you're not responsible for the things that your supplier does that could lead to a lawsuit. You might get dragged into that lawsuit, but your clients can agree in your terms and conditions that they understand you're not responsible. Advisories to clients. I mentioned that as a travel advisor, you have a duty of care that you owe to your clients. There are all sorts of court cases out there where travel agents or travel advisors have been sued for failing to disclose certain things. You can make those disclosures and those advisories in your terms and conditions document. I mean, you wouldn't think that you have to tell a client that they need a passport in order to travel internationally, but somewhere along the way, a travel agent got sued because they didn't tell their client. The client showed up at the airport without a passport. And so now that's something that courts have said we have to disclose to people. So obviously, you don't want to have an overwrought conversation with each and every client. Put it in your terms and conditions. You don't have to worry about it. Disclaimers of liability and responsibility. This is the big one. So obviously, you are not responsible for anything that your suppliers do or fail to do that could lead to damages, injury, loss, anything like that. But also supplier policies that your clients don't like. You're not responsible for that. And even if your supplier goes bankrupt and fails to deliver the services entirely, you can disclaim responsibility for that in your terms and conditions document. So that could be anything from the supplier has a no refunds policy, your client's upset about that and wants to file a lawsuit, or it could be that there's seaweed on the beach and it smells horrible and your clients get upset and want to file a lawsuit against everybody because their vacation was ruined because of the seaweed. Obviously, it's not your job to clean up the seaweed on the beach. A motor coach gets into an accident. You're not responsible for the ground transportation. You don't own that company. The driver's not your employee. You're not responsible for maintenance on the bus. All of those things that could lead to a lawsuit, your clients can let you off the hook by agreeing to your terms and conditions. And then lastly, I'm spending so much time on this slide, I know, but lastly, force majeure. A force majeure event is anything that is unforeseen, unpredictable, outside of anybody's control, and if that means that it's impossible for you to do something that you're supposed to do for your clients, the force majeure provision is what lets you off the hook. So unforeseen, unpredictable, outside of your control, that can be fires, volcanoes erupting, hurricanes, floods, pandemics and quarantines, acts of terrorism, strikes, all of those things. So on a small scale, if a tornado rips through your community and knocks out your power for 2 weeks, and you don't have an internet connection and you miss a bunch of payment deadlines, the force majeure language is what says you're not responsible for missing those payments that you couldn't make because the tornado was a force majeure event. You can also include language explaining to your clients that your suppliers are all going to have their own force majeure policies. So, for example, if the volcano erupts and it means the flights can't happen, or the hotel burns to the ground, or there's a hurricane that means that the cruise gets canceled, any of those things are outside of your responsibility, of course, but you can let your clients know that because of force majeure, if a trip gets canceled or postponed, you'll do your best to get reimbursement for them, but it's really just going to be according to whatever the supplier policy is.
Hey, Tom, before you go on.
Yeah.
One question came in, approximate cost range for that, if to have somebody develop a TNC for them.
Let me get to that at the end if I can. Sorry.
No problem.
I'm chewing on some ice now. Yeah, I'll definitely talk about what I do when I do that. So when you have a strong terms and conditions document, obviously, like I said before, it doesn't do a whole lot of good to have all these really great protections for your business if your clients aren't actually signing on to it in some way, shape, or form. So you want your clients to agree to it. It's not a contract if they don't sign on to it. And I recommend, because the terms documents that I generate for people tend to be longer, they have some legal language. You want to make it easy for your clients to do business with you. You don't want to be rubbing their nose in a bunch of legal stuff. So I recommend using a client agreement in conjunction with your terms and conditions to secure your client's agreement to those terms. So the client agreement is a shorter, more user-friendly document. The one I use is just a couple of paragraphs that say, I'm really excited to work with you. I'm going to do a great job to take care of you, blah, blah, blah. And then at the bottom of that, I have some boxes for them to check. One, that they agree to my terms and conditions, one, that they agree to my fee structure, one, that they agree to my advisory about insurance. But you can really customize your client agreement, that anything else that's really important for you or for that client, you can have different client agreements for different clients, that sort of thing. So so like, for example, if you do a lot of school groups, maybe you want the parents to check a box that says they agree to the student code of conduct on behalf of their student and they give permission to travel. You can really customize it and be more flexible and adaptable there. So the terms and conditions, like I said, is the baseline for every trip that you book, whether it's a group, if it's FIT, corporate leisure, anything like that. It is a one-size-fits-all document. You don't want to be making exceptions or poking holes in your terms and conditions. You want it to be stable and consistent. And then in your client agreement, you could even have different client agreements for different clients. So like, I've got one client agreement that doesn't have a box to check for my fee structure because for friends and family, sometimes I don't charge them a fee. But if I've got a super difficult client, maybe I want to charge them a really extra high fee. So I have a version for my pain in the butt clients. So you can have different versions. You can be more flexible and adaptable. You can reinforce important terms from your terms and conditions, but just make sure that there isn't an inconsistency between your baseline terms document and what's in your client agreement. And then the last thing that I think is important about using a client agreement at the beginning of your relationship with that client is it really creates a mindset that they are working with you, and that I think it prevents the tire kickers from shopping around. So when somebody checks a box saying, I'm hiring you to plan my trip, and I'm excited to work with you. I'm hiring you to plan my trip. I agree to your terms. Check. They fill out the form. It creates a mindset with them that, okay, I'm working with this person now, and I'm going to let them do their job, and I'm not going to go and see if I can get a better deal someplace else at Costco or whatever. So, I think the client agreement has that added effect psychologically on clients, which I think is really good. I use TravelJoy in my business. I know lots of people use lots of different tech tools, but whether you're using TravelJoy, Vacation CRM, Tess, anything else that's out there, there are lots of different things out there. I think that investing in a good tech tool that gives you the ability to create a custom form makes it really easy for your clients to just check a box and return the form to you. If it can also transmit credit card numbers in a secure, encrypted way, that's a good thing. Not a bad idea if it has some sort of e-signature function, because there are situations where you might need a signature rather than checking a box. And of course, you're going to want to keep a record of when your clients agree to your terms and conditions by checking that box and returning the form. So, like a CRM system that enables you to keep track of, oh yeah, this is the date that the Smith family signed my terms, et cetera, et cetera. So this is my workflow. We're kind of getting into the workflow piece of it, which is the third thing that I think is really important. Right after I do an intake call with a client, I send them a copy of my new client info form, which is what I call my client agreement, basically. And the client agreement has that link to my terms and conditions. And that way, right after I get off the phone for my first call with them, they're agreeing to my terms at the very front end of the client relationship. But then I also have them agree to my terms and conditions an additional time whenever they make a credit card payment. So if they, my credit card authorization language just says I'm authorizing you to charge my card with the supplier, comma, and I agree to your terms and conditions, which are located at, and then the link to where they can find them. And that way, maybe it's a repeat client, they haven't booked with me in a while. I'm not going to send them my new client info form, but when they make a deposit, when they make a final payment, if they add supplemental services, they're agreeing to my terms and conditions over and over again. And so that's a workflow that I think really works for me. So on my new client info form / client agreement, this is the checkbox language that I recommend. I'm hiring whatever the name of your agency is to plan my trip, and I agree to your terms and conditions of booking, which are located at wherever you've uploaded it, whether it's a page on your website, a Google Doc, a Dropbox file, any of those things will work. And then this is the language that I use for credit card authorizations. I'm authorizing the agency to charge my card ending in 4567 in the amount on this invoice or the amount referenced above. And I agree to their terms and conditions, which are located at this link. So, credit card authorization, client agreement. Basically, it's duplicative, but you're basically having them agree to your terms and conditions over and over and over again. So if you have to cut a corner or miss a step, you're picking it up someplace else. The question I get a lot is, well, is it enough to have them check a box? And it is. There's no magic to wet ink on paper. Again, you want to make it easy for your clients to work with you. You don't want to be constantly sending things back and forth and back and forth. And now I need you to fill out this, and now I need you to do that. You don't want to send them 8 pages of legal stuff in your terms and conditions. You just need a record of when and how they agreed to it, and checking a box is perfectly sufficient. Whether they go to that page on your website and actually read the terms, that's their responsibility, but when they check that box, you're protected. If there is a waiver of legal rights in your terms and conditions, that's different. So if you have a specific waiver of legal rights, that you need a signature for, but electronic signatures are more than okay. Again, you don't need wet ink on paper. And so a lot, if your tech tool has an e-signature function, that's going to help you out. Okay. So kind of getting toward the end of this here, but the key takeaways are, I really recommend that you get your own errors and omissions insurance. Start with strong tools like a terms and conditions document, a client agreement, and a tech tool that makes it easy for your clients to do business with you, and have a good solid workflow and good scripts when you're working with your clients. Be able to kind of rattle off what your booking policy is for new clients, what your fee structure is, so that it's really, it just comes second nature to you and it doesn't sound like a big deal. So going back to the question that came up, what's the cost in doing a terms and conditions document? Because I do so many of them, I do it on a flat rate for people. And because this is being recorded and, I don't know if somebody's going to be reading this 6 years down the line. So I will just tell you that right now, I try to keep the cost of a terms and conditions document right around the range of one good solid mid-range booking. So it's not cost prohibitive. When I do a terms document for people, I draft it custom on a custom basis. I include on that flat rate talking through the workflow piece of it, depending on what technology tools you're using. I also give you a template of a client agreement if you want to do it the way I was just describing, and use a client agreement as the vehicle to get people to agree to your terms. If that template works for you, you can just use it right out of the box, or you can put it into your own voice. There's nothing really legalistic per se about the client agreement, so you can tinker with it if you want to. And then the only other thing that I do as part of the flat rate package is I keep an eye on all of this for my clients. So if there's a new regulation that gets passed or a new something new that happens in the industry that's significant. If I update my boilerplate language on a particular point, I'll go through my client list to see, okay, these are the businesses that have the language on whatever the thing is that changed. I'll send out an email to those clients and say, hey, there's this thing I think you might want to know about. I recommend that you change your language on this section to whatever the new language is. I don't send invoices with those updates. That's all just part of keeping it current, because ideally it doesn't happen all that often. You want your document to be stable and consistent. I think even with COVID, I only changed maybe 2 or 3 small things because I draft documents in a way that they're really going to help us not only with the things we're dealing with now, but whatever the next horrible thing is that we have to confront in our world of selling travel. So the flat rate for that, I have a discount for ASTA members because I participate in the ASTA attorney referral program. I think I do have a slightly higher rate if you're a tour operator, which I don't think any of you probably are if you're hosted by TPI. But for a straight up the middle travel agency that is either a member of ASTA or independent, I think you could expect that, think about what the last commission was that you made on a week-long trip, and it would be around there or maybe a little bit under, depending on what you're booking. I mean, if you're booking a lot of luxury, then it's definitely under that. If you're booking like bargain all-inclusive packages that, lowest common denominator, it might be a little bit higher than that, but it's right around that range, if that gives you a sense of it. So and that's where you can find me if you need me. So
good idea. Another question: can you discuss PCI compliance as related to the CVV storage in the CRM, storing credit card information?
Yep. So if you are storing credit card numbers, you are not supposed to be storing the CVC code in the same place as the rest of the document, the rest of the number. So if you've got a tech tool that is PCI compliant, so like TravelJoy, I don't know how many people on here use TravelJoy, but TravelJoy will remove the number after a period of time, and then the client you have to wait until the client reauthorizes the charge before they'll give you the CVI number where they'll unmask that for you. You could potentially, keep the credit card numbers in your database and then have a piece of scrap paper that has I don't recommend this. In fact, I think it's a horrible idea, but I think that's where the tech tool is your friend. Finding a tech tool that is PCI compliant can definitely help you.
Okay, another question was, can you give an example of a waiver of a legal right?
Yeah, so a lot of people have been so a lot of people have been asking me about COVID specific waivers that say things like, I'm not going to hold you responsible if I get COVID. So that sort of specific waiver would require a signature. There are some documents that are floating around out there. ASTA has a COVID waiver that I think is really good. The reason I don't include those things in terms and conditions documents is because my view is you want your terms and conditions document, like I said, to be available for every kind of trip that you do, whether it's and you want it to stand the test of time. You don't want to be constantly changing it. And so, before COVID, it was Zika. Before Zika, it was something else. And, I hate saying this, but like, we don't know what the next thing is that we're going to have to deal with. So having terms and conditions that are broad enough that it doesn't require you to waive a right that's specific, that way your terms are going to protect you not only for COVID, but also for hurricanes and fires and floods and all those other things, terror threats, civil unrest, any of that. Another example would be photo releases. I've had some people ask me lately about, I want to use my clients' vacation photos to market my business. People have a right to, it's called a right of publicity. It's a state law right. And if you were asking them to waive their right of publicity, then you would need a signature on a waiver form for something like that, because there's a legal right that they're waiving. I mean, for photos, I just think, I mean, I use my clients' photos on my Instagram of my travel business and on my Facebook page and sometimes on my blog posts. And whenever I do that, I always just ask them. And if they say no, then I don't do it. And if they say yes, and then later on they come back to me and say, I've got a new hairstyle and I don't like that old picture of me. Can you take it down? Of course I'm going to take it down. So I don't know that, requiring people to sign away their rights to say no is necessarily the best business practice. That's not how I deal with my clients, but in any event, if you're going to ask people to do that up front as a condition of doing business with you, then you should have them actually sign a waiver form. So that's another example.
Okay. Are there other questions out there, anybody? I don't have anything else in the chat box right now. If you want to, you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can type any, oops. All right, let's see. Hello, Mr. Carpenter. I was on international call. Wants to know whether they can find a record of the session. I've recorded it, and I will probably give it to TPI, and TPI will go ahead and post it. If they don't, you can always email me. What's my easiest email address? Toby, T-O-B-Y, at Your Travel Steward, which is Y-O-U-R, Travel Steward, STEWARD.com, and I can send it to you. So that won't be a problem. I
also have a YouTube channel. So if you like Google Carpenter travel law, I think you can probably find it on YouTube. But I've got a bunch of webinars that I've done for different organizations and people. Some of this information is on there already. But I also, every once in a while, I'll record a video about something else, like why it's a bad idea for travel advisors to book Airbnbs for clients, which is my pet peeve issue about things. But you can also go and see, some of this content is replicated there as well.
Okay. Can they get a copy of these slides? Can we get a copy of the slides or no?
Yeah, I don't have a problem doing that. I can send you a copy of the presentation. Sure.
Yeah, if you would send that to me, that'd be great. And then I can give it to whoever asks for it. That's not a problem. Got a lot of thank yous. Thank you. That was great.
It's my pleasure. I mean, I think, I mentioned at the top of this when I was talking about my background that I used to work in the entertainment industry, and then I quit that job to run my travel business full time and set up this little solo law practice, thinking that I was going to be reviewing employment contracts for artists and performing artists and actors and things like that. And then I started, kind of tripped and fell into this niche of travel law. There aren't that many many of us who do this. But I really feel like, the peace of mind that comes with having your business protected is really a worthwhile investment. And I'm glad that I'm able to do it at a reasonable cost for people because, truthfully, like the more of us that protect our business, the better it is for the industry as a whole, right? So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I don't see if there's anybody else for the question. It's pretty much just best legal entity for small travel business. Okay, they like you a lot.
Yeah. So so I think there's a question there. In terms of like the business formation, should you be an LLC? Should you be a solo practitioner or sole proprietor? Gosh, I can't speak tonight. You'll definitely want to talk to your tax person about it, because I'm not a tax lawyer, and so your tax accountant might have an opinion about that. But generally speaking, I think for most small travel businesses, an LLC is kind of the sweet spot between getting the best tax treatment for your business and protecting your personal assets from liability. Corporation, you kind of get taxed twice, but your personal assets are protected. If you're a sole proprietor, you only get taxed once, but your personal assets are protected potentially, gosh, I'm tripping over my tongue, potentially impacted by any lawsuits against your business. So I think an LLC is the sweet spot, but the answer is going to be different for every business, and you'd want to talk to your accountant as well as a lawyer. There's nothing specifically about travel that's related to that. I mean, I put LLCs together for people, I can do that, but you can also talk to a small business lawyer in your community, and they're going to be able to put an LLC together for you pretty easily and advise you about that.
Just don't think there's anything else that has come across on the chat. So thank you very much, Tom. That was great. Really good information for everybody. I'm sure we had a total of 35 people on at one time. So there we go.
Great.
Yeah, that was good. Okay, everybody, like I said, I put my email address out there. You can email me if you want copies of the slides or a link to this recording if you need it. Just let me know and I'll be happy to do it. Thank you all very much for coming. We really appreciate it. Have a wonderful afternoon and sell lots and lots of cruises and FITs and everything else, because they're all coming back. Thanks so much. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.